So if you look up badass or badassery in the vocabulary, you'll probably find Aaron Novello's pictures right next to it. So I got to interview Aaron in the Team Gogo Agent Attraction call a few months back, and I didn't know who he was. Well, after the call, I got off of there and I was like, oh my gosh, I really like him. I love his mindset. I love his attitude. I think it's really important, our mindset, and it's really important what we believe of ourselves, because then we take action if we believe that we can. And I'm super excited for all of you to be able to listen in.
Super cool. I got the Gogo seal of approval, apparently. Yeah, that's cool.
So it was like, I was like, you were like the badassery of real estate in action. And I wanted to interview you. I know you do all kinds of interviews, like, you know, all kinds of things, but I really wanted to get to know you of how did you get to this mindset and how did you get so solid in who you are, right? So can we go all the way back to like, let's start at childhood. Who is Aaron?
Yeah, so I think that we can only behave in accordance with the way that we see ourselves, which is super interesting, right? Because I have the good fortune of coaching agents across the country and, you know, in the organization that we're building. And no matter how much rah-rah, like how much motivation, we will always fall back with our self-image. And the issue is like, okay, well, where does that image come from? And usually it comes from experiences that we've had in the past. And what I think people don't realize is that it's also malleable, meaning that mean? It means that you can change it. And you know this because you spent a lot of time with like Tony Robbins, and he talks about like physiology, focus, and language. And those are the ways that we can shape our identity. And our identity is how we see ourselves, right? So, you know, there's a saying that says like, when you see it, you'll believe it. That's actually not what's accurate. It's when you believe it is when you'll see it. Yeah. So my experience as a younger person, which kind of shaped me at that point, was my parents got divorced. Biological parents got divorced when I was young. And I was sent on a plane like for 3 years, from the time I was 1 till 4, to go live somewhere for 2 months out of the year, 3 months out of the year. And really with a stranger, you know what I mean? Not somebody that I actually knew them. And if you can imagine kind of being a little 3 or 4 year old, like our brains aren't fully developed at that time. So we make meaning. And the meaning that I deduced is like, oh, I must have done something wrong. Like there must be something wrong that this person that I love so much is like sending me away. So then the meaning that I came up with is like, oh, that means I have to be like the best at everything. So
okay. I'm going to stop you right there because I know exactly why I like you. So I'm going to tell you my story, which is literally the same meaning, different story behind it. But I have my parents, they're still alive, healthy, and they're married. And I was raised with my sister the same way. My parents never told us they love us, like the words, right? Mm-hmm. And so I achieved, thinking if I achieve this, then they're going to tell me they're proud of me. Or if I get that award, then they're going to tell me they love me. So I know exactly where you're coming from and where that achiever began. Now I don't know how to do anything else. I no longer need that. I no longer do it because of the same reason, but it created a habit. And I don't necessarily want to break. It's my identity. It's who I am.
Yeah. And what I'm aware of is that the reason underneath changes. So initially it was fear. It's like, I'm afraid that if I don't perform at an optimal level, then I won't be accepted and therefore I won't be loved.
Oh,
the power,
you speak my language.
While externally people might look at you and be like, wow, like you're producing favorable outcomes. Internally, it wasn't like a fantastic experience. And it's really about raising levels of consciousness. So the first level of consciousness is like, why is this happening like to me? It's to me consciousness, which is really victim. Like, you know, this is not fair. Like, why am I having to go like, you know, on a plane? And like, why is this happening to me, right? The second level of consciousness is by me, which is meaning like I'm a co-creator of my experience. So I create with the creator, right? And the idea is like, instead of asking, how is this why is this happening to me? It's like, well, how's this happening for me? So everything becomes like a learning experience. And then the highest level of consciousness is actually through me, which is that there's something that's bigger than me, and you can call that whatever you want, Ray, Chi, the primordial vibration, the Holy Spirit, God, like whatever you want to call it, that wants to accomplish something through me.
Oh my gosh, like you and me literally talk the same language. You know the Zig Ziglar quote that I can have absolutely anything in life, the more people I can have to get what they want. I'm in the people business. I'm in the business of changing lives through me and through what I learned. And I do believe in God. So I do talk a lot about God. And I have a lot of spiritual leaders that live today and lived in the past, like Dr. Wayne Dyer, who's no longer here with us, but Tony Robbins, who is. And I try to take as many people as I can every single year to UPW, which is Unleash the Power Within. He is 60 some years old. So who knows how long he's going to be here. And it's so different to be able to go to an event like that in person than it is to read a book or watch something on TV or YouTube, right? So I'm assuming what happened, it started in your childhood, but when did you start realizing that, hold on a minute, I give meanings to things because of things that happened. It doesn't necessarily stand true anymore. When did you start realizing this soul search? Well, first of all, I say the same thing. I say that business is a spiritual game.
My family of origin, they're nice people, but they, were ignorant. And ignorant doesn't mean stupid. It just means they didn't know something about financial freedom and independence. So I watched, they live paycheck to paycheck. They're kind. A couple times we were on food stamps. So I was just aware of the negative consequences of poverty, essentially. And I made a decision where I was like, look, I don't know what the way is, but I'm going to either find the way or make the way. This will not be my experience for myself or anybody that I'm responsible for. So I started to read a lot of books. And the books that I had a tendency to read obsessively were about building wealth, and they all had a tendency to gravitate towards real estate. And I figured, well, what better way to learn about the vehicle of real estate than to help people to buy and sell it? And what was interesting, Gogo, is on those personality profile tests that I would take, I'd always try to find who made the most money. And it was like surgeons. I try to will the test to be like, yeah, I'm supposed to be a surgeon. You know what it would always come back as? Salesperson. And I'd be like, no. Like, yeah. Right. So that led me to, I was in a talk at the University of Florida where I went to school, and there was a woman there who was talking about real estate. And the guy who was leading the talk was the richest guy in Gainesville. He owned the biggest private gym in Gainesville. He had a helicopter, a plane, all that stuff. And he was talking about a book called Think and Grow Rich. So those two things kind of coincided. I figured, well, all right, well, what better way for me to kind of, get into this, this invisible hand that was pushing me in that direction. And that's how we started to kind of look at real estate sales as a mechanism for raising cash to build wealth. And it wasn't fantastic at first. I made $13,000 my first 10 months. It was not off to the races.
I made $16,000 in my first year.
And I think people imagine, particularly in an Instagram world, that that's how it is. But anything worth doing well is worth doing poorly before you can learn to do it well. Mm-hmm. And I'm glad that the barrier is so high, because if it was easy, everybody would do it and the pay would drop dramatically.
So then what happened? Was there a pinnacle moment when you're like, okay, I need to figure out this mindset things? Was it kind of like a snowball effect? Where did it really start for you when you started working on Aaron?
Well, I had been, reading lots of books. I've been professionally coached since I'm 26. I'm 43 now. So I recognized, that I needed guides really to kind of condense the learning curve. I spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on personal growth and development. And what really caused me to start to pivot in the direction that I'm going now was not a wonderful, warm and fuzzy epiphany. It's usually pain. Because pain is a much more stronger motivator than pleasure. We're way more motivated by pain than we are pleasure. I was selling 150 homes a year, just me. I didn't have buyer's agents or anything. It's just staff. 80% of that business being listings sold. And I was also coaching 30 people, 28 to 30 people individually one-on-one, and 50 people.
Oh my gosh.
So I was doing that for 2 years. And, while the money's great, what was happening is it was requiring 60 to 70 hours a week of working. And I have younger. Yeah. I had no life, but I also, I have a 13-year-old and a 10-year-old now. So I was making a trade. I was very conscious of the trade that I was making. At the same time, though, it started to reach a point where it was no longer acceptable to me to make that trade. And it wasn't necessary, because the other thing that I'd been doing, because I was so maniacally focused on wealth, is from the beginning, I was saving and investing 50% of everything I earned. And my wife, we were having conversations, and she's the operations person. And she would say to me, look, what are you doing? How much money would it take for you to chill out? But that was, you see,
do you know how to chill?
Yeah, I'm learning. So what I'm aware of is that's running. I was running aggressively. So it's one thing to run towards something. It's another thing to run away from it.
I did the same thing. When I joined EXP, I was very much in production. I burned the candle on every angle. So if my candle had 100 angles, I burned them on all angles. I did production, I did agent attraction, I built 2 boot camps, like all of that in the first 3 years being with the company. I also haven't sold real estate in the last probably 3 years. So 2.5 years, burned it all. And then the last 3 years, I haven't sold a single piece of real estate. I do it through my team, but not through my own time and effort anymore. But what I wanted to say, now that I was in Europe, it was the first time ever, because what happened is, right, I was a solo agent with a single assistant who was also my transaction coordinator initially when I switched to EXP. Then I started all of these different companies, build all of these boot camps, did the downline, all of those things, which now I had to learn how to leverage. I can't be doing everything anymore. So ended up with 17 assistants, but I put all of my effort into building these different companies and being involved in every single step in every single process, any new release, anything that we do, right? Now that I went to Europe for 14 days, I think I was gone. I think I talked to my team maybe twice,
Yeah.
maybe. And so at first I was like, oh, they can kind of do this without me, which is super exciting. But at the same time, when you're so involved in something, it's also super scary that you're no longer needed.
Like being being a leader of leaders has different activities that are associated with it, different responsibilities than being a technician or a rainmaker. So to be a rainmaker, I got to prospect every day. I got to do lead follow-up. I got to go on appointments. I have to negotiate deals. I have to practice my skills on a regular basis. I have to be consistent. Like there's certain things that I have to do if I want to do it in a meaningful way. Well, being a leader has nothing to do with any of that stuff. I have to build people one-to-one and one-to-many. I have to be constantly learning so I could be adding value to other people. Like I have to constructively work through conflict because there will be conflict.
Oh yeah.
I have to be able to teach others and lead classes. So there's it's a completely different skill set. I have to understand media truthfully, because the way I tell the team, I'm like, look, I really don't do the media for me. Like I'm aware that as I get bigger, I make opportunities for you guys. Because if I hop on a third party call and they've watched 100 hours of my content, it's done. Like there's no like hard selling happening.
Right. But I want to ask you some questions that I just kind of want to fire off some questions, because I feel like I could talk to you for hours, but these are some important questions that I like to ask people who spend a lot of time in their head. So how about the first one? What is the biggest lesson you learned, and was the longest that took you to learn it? Like maybe you have to learn it a couple of times. Like I like to say, God will throw you pebbles, and if you don't listen, he will throw a brick.
That ultimately what I'm really looking for is inside of me.
What is your most important habit that formed you who you are?
Yeah, I finish. So I think that like it's very easy to start things. And what I see is that people go through this like cycle. They start off with like uninformed optimism. So they might look at what you're doing and be like, oh, this is fantastic. She makes so much money. Like this is gonna be great. And then what they end up with is, once they start doing it, is informed pessimism. This is harder than I thought it was. And where they end up with is they end up in the valley of despair, where they start to doubt, I don't know if this is for me, that I do the right thing. Maybe I need to switch companies, right? And when they do that, they just find something else to get excited about again. And they never actually accomplish anything. So like the best planners who don't execute get nowhere. So what's harder is to actually finish things. Like it's to set a goal to sell 100 homes a year and be maniacally obsessed for 5 years until you hit it. That's harder.
How do you define success?
Now, in the past, if you would have asked me that, I would have said units, volume, and money. Now it's impact. So if I'm going to be greedy for anything, I want to be greedy for my name being in somebody's testimony.
Who inspires you?
Yeah,
could be living, could be.
I mean, I think a lot of people inspire me. I think people like Grant and what he's done, Grant Cardone, what he's done with media. I've watched him with that. I've learned a lot from him. People like Pace Morby. I know you know Pace. He is. I was just at an event with him, and he leads from the back, and he's an awesome community builder, and he really is like super generous, like silly generous with time, energy, and money. So people like Lars, he inspires me. I don't know anybody who gives away as much money as him.
What strategies or techniques do you use to maintain a positive mindset?
What we focus on is what we feel, and what we feel is our emotional home. So if I'm focused on what's not working all the time, what I'm going to feel is like, I don't know, not worthy, not complete, unfinished, like that sort of thing. So, I make it an intentional and purposeful practice just to be like appreciative of things like my health, like a really good night's sleep, like the health of my family, recognizing the opportunities that are available to me, the time and space that I live in, where platforms like this, like me and you would never meet each other 200 years ago, probably not, where we have access to basically the library of information of humanity, and it's free. So just to like recognize, what works, and that I have the greatest gift that I'll ever receive, which is the gift of life. Like once that goes away, I promise you, like all your friends will disappear. You know what I mean? Like everybody will go about their business and do something else. And all of this would be happening right now. Somebody else would be on this call with Gogo. Like somebody else would be, coaching you, like doing all this stuff. I just wouldn't be here to experience it.
So you said you love reading books. I can see plenty of them behind you. Give me like 2 or 3 that are your favorite books.
The first one is it's a book called The Almanac of Naval Ravikant, which sounds like yeah.
Okay, how do we spell that?
The Almanac of Naval, Naval, and then Ravikant. I don't know. You could kind of do it phonetically, but if you Google it, it'll pop up.
Yeah.
Novello is a guy who he is out in Silicon Valley. He's had a bunch of exits. He's a young person. He's got more money than he needs. But it's very rare, Gogo, that I read something, and it's not because I'm so smart. It's just that most information is recirculated information. It's rare that I read something that's like accretive that I haven't heard before. Most of the time, it's like recycled. It's like when people say like Atomic Habits, that was mind blowing. I'm like, really? Like, it's not. That's an old idea that's been talked about like a million times before. You know what I'm saying? It might have been repackaged in a different way.
Yeah.
But one of the things that he said when I was talking to you about understanding leverage, he said something that I'd never heard before. And I'm telling you, it completely changed my thinking and radically changed the course of my life because of that. He talks about that there's 4 forms of leverage. The lowest form is labor, which is interesting. It's like, why is that the lowest form? That's what most of us go to. Like, oh yeah, I can get people that work with me or for me. Well, labor gets tired, sick, quits, wants more splits, wants to switch companies, like whatever, right? It's the lowest form. It's better than having no leverage, but it's still not a great form of leverage. The next form of leverage is capital. It's money. It's like, well, why is money more valuable than labor? Well, never gets sick, never gets tired, never gets quit. If I invest in an apartment building, it works in that apartment building 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Okay? But it's constricted to the building. There's 2 forms of leverage that are actually more powerful than those 2. And the people that have used them in the last 30 years have accomplished what it took others who used those first 2 forms 200 years to accomplish. They did it in 30 years. What's above capital is media. It's what you've built your whole empire on. Why is media more valuable than money? Listen to what I just said to you. Media attention is more valuable than money. How? Well, media works 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. There's no borders or boundaries, guys. My money works only in the apartment building. The media works anywhere on the planet where there's an internet connection. So now, because I'm beaten up on YouTube all the time and adding lots of value, it is a common occurrence 5 to 6 times a week. People reach out to me, schedule a call with me to talk to me about EXP that I've never spoken to before in my life. Media is more valuable than money. Now, when I read this, my wife was posting pictures of our kids on Instagram. Like, I wasn't paying attention to it at all. Once I understood that, we need to go. So I went from 2,000 to 47,000 on Instagram. I went from, right, we started to pay attention to it. And I started to learn. I hired somebody, paid him a bunch of money to teach me like how to do this. Okay. The highest form of leverage is software. Why is software more powerful than media? Well, it has the same kind of structure that it works 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, anywhere on the planet. But it costs almost no money to duplicate or replicate once you create it once. Look at the richest people on the planet. Zuckerberg, code. Bezos, code. Elon, code. Right? It's software. So when I started to look at this, I started to look at what I was doing. And I was like, I'm hanging out at the lower end of the triangle. I want to hang out up there. So what did I do? Started getting aggressive with media. And what is EXP essentially? Software. Just software to process deals that cost $150 to start one time and $85 a month. So now I'm hanging out at the higher end. And what happens there is that what's wild, and I know you've experienced, is that it's easier. So part of like my job as a leader of leaders now is to change the way people see themselves.
But I get so frustrated sometimes because I see things in people that they don't see in themselves. And I think that's the hardest part. You can't awaken someone unless they are ready to be awakened, unless they're ready to meet themselves, right? So that's sometimes it's super hard for me because I feel like I see more in people than they see in themselves. Have you ever run into that?
Yeah, of course. But it's an issue of like my experiences is it's two things. It's an issue of belief and an issue of deserving.
Mhm. Yeah. But
And
have you found an easy way of awakening people before they are ready to be
it's a
awakened?
couple things. Like one is it's just casting a vision for them. Like I'm thinking about one in particular. This guy Ben, he came to a mastermind I did, and I could tell when we were doing this because we would have like a marine like do workouts in the morning, and they were physically hard on the ocean and stuff. And leaders go first. And when it came time to pick up the 50-pound weight or whatever, like I picked it up first, but then he picked it up second. And what I said to him after the workout, I was like, hey, I just need you to know, like, you have the capacity to lead. But he didn't see himself that way. He saw himself as a follower, somebody who's in like the stage. And what's happened over time, he joined Compass, whatever. They gave him money, but he partnered with us recently. He didn't see himself as somebody who did media. He didn't see himself as somebody who does events. And now he's doing all that stuff and he's starting to build and grow. But it took a while. So what I'm aware of is like, it's not something that like changes overnight, in my experience anyway. Like if you're
Yeah.
going to change the way that you see yourself, it's going to come from people breathing into you or over you, like a different version of you, and then hanging around with people that are already doing what it is that you want to do. And then you'll be like, like Gogo's cool, but like she could do it, I could do it. You know what I mean? Like that's what'll happen. Like Aaron's
That's
like, yeah.
exact. I know what you're saying. Like the saying people say that proximity is power.
Yeah, for sure.
I used to think that means like you need to have rich friends. So if you get in jail, they have money to bail you out. Right? It's absolutely not what that means. Like I remember going one of the times when I learned this. We were at a Cabo event, at a Brand Go Build event, and I went to the bathroom and happened to be going to the bathroom at the same time with Elena Cardone. The stall was the bathroom door stall was broken, so I held her door and she held mine, and I'm sitting. I'm sitting on the toilet and I'm thinking to myself, seriously, right now, I'm having Elena Cardone hold my bathroom stall door so I can use the bathroom because the door is not closing. Like, that just made me realize that she's just another human. She goes to the bathroom, other humans goes to the bathroom. She's kind. She held my door. I held hers, right? It removed that distance. Prior to that, I saw Lena Cardone on the stage. She was that
Yeah, like
person that was so far away and so out there and so up high that who knows if I'm ever going to be able to reach, right? And then just putting yourself in that physical space with someone. Same thing happened when I had my initial conversation with Mark Z and Kurt, my sponsor here in the company, right? Kurt Shewell is my direct sponsor. And I went out for lunch with them. Prior to that, I never met either one of them. I just saw billboards of Mark Z. I mean, every 8 feet on, I 94, I think, where we live in Michigan. He was on every 8 feet, right? So I saw him on the billboard. I never saw him in person. So when I sat across from him at the table and they started talking about revenue share and stocks and ownership and all that, and I actually get to see the numbers and I get to sit across from other humans. And I was like, oh, well, I'm sorry, but if you guys can do it, I can do it. Right? Like it literally removes that distance when you put yourself physically in the same room with those people. You realize that they are people.
Exactly. Yeah. And, again, that teacher said you could do everything I could do if you had faith as big as a mustard seed.
Mm.
So, to the best of my knowledge, he had the same things we did, which is a body, the Holy Spirit. He had doubt, he had worry, he had fear. Like he tried to get out of things. Like he was, in the human form. So, we have the same thing. We just need to acknowledge it and accept it.
So I have a book suggestion for you if you haven't read it yet.
Sure.
So you mentioned Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. Have you read Outwitting the Devil?
Yeah, it's a good book.
Oh, good. You read it already.
Yeah,
that was a really good one. Like that was a mind shift for me too. I literally had to read it out loud for myself to understand the question Napoleon was asking and the way the devil was responding. Like I literally had to read the conversation out loud to myself to understand it. I thought it was a really good book. So Aaron, I don't want to take any more of your time. We are coming to the end of this episode. I absolutely love what you stand for and your work ethic, your personality, the drive that you have, the way that you help people. And I want to ask you, what is the best way for people to get a hold of you?
Yeah, so they can go to our YouTube channel, which is the Aaron Novello podcast. And, just check us out there.
Awesome. You also have your website, which is yourname.com. It's Aaron Novello, and Novello is spelled Novello, and Aaron with 2 A's.com. That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for bringing your time, which is an hour of your life. I appreciate it. I know what it costs, right? You could have spent this time with your family, with your children. So I appreciate you very much. Thank you.
Yeah, the same. I know you could have done as well, so I'm appreciative of the opportunity.
I didn't know what to do at the listing presentation.
So I think that this will help a lot of people, bro. So the best way to prepare for a listing appointment is to ask the seller some questions.